Hello and welcome back. Today a new episode of the InstaFilter video series where I will share how you can use the invert adjustment to create amazing Instagram looks. Let's start with this image. Especially night photos, like this image, are an interesting candidate to apply an invert adjustment, as we will see why in a minute. So let's make a duplicate of the image by using right-click on the layer and selecting the duplicate menu item. I will then add an invert adjustment and move it as a child to the duplicate. Remember to make it a child layer so the adjustment only applies to its parent. You need to drag and drop it on top of the text of the layer. Before moving on, let's have a look at the result of the invert adjustment. Basically, all the dark areas have become bright and the bright areas dark. Remember that a bright pixel has a higher value, so let's think about subtracting them from the original layer. If we do that, probably the darker areas will be even more darkened. And the darkening effect will gradually become less and less for the brighter pixels. Let's see if our reasoning is correct. By setting the blend mode of the inverted image to subtract. Have a look at that. That looks amazing. The darker areas are indeed much darker and the bright areas are not affected that much. Pretty cool. If you think the effect is too much, let us use the blend ranges and lower the intensity by lowering the darker area blend values. So basically, we are saying don't subtract for the blacks and gradually apply the subtract as the pixels get brighter. This gives a very nice subtle effect. Have a look at the before and the after. The image is so much more interesting. If you still find the effect too much, we can go back to the blend ranges and lower the effect on the shadows from the source layer. This will decrease the effect as we are again telling Affinity to subtract more gradually as the pixels in the source layer become brighter. By using these two curves in the blend options, you can customize it to get that look that suits your image. Let's have a look at the before and the after. A pretty cool effect, which we applied in very easy steps. Let's try it again on a different photo. You notice this image has a lot of bright areas from the light and we just want to keep these. But to get a bit more depth and contrast, we would also like to darken the shadows. So how about we apply the invert subtract method also on this photo? Again, duplicate first, add the invert adjustment and move it as a child to the duplicate. Change the blend mode to subtract and finally adjust the blend range so it is applied gradually. Have a look at that, just amazing. Especially if we compare the before. A much more interesting image to share. Let's have a look at a more challenging image and see what we can do with the invert adjustment. This is quite a dark image already. I am afraid if we darken it more, it will become too dark, but I still want more depth in the image. I'm going to apply the same steps to create an inverted layer by duplicating and applying an invert adjustment. As you see, we get a very bright image. Instead of subtracting this from the original, I'm going to use it to brighten the image by using the screen blend mode. This, of course, is not what we are looking for. But if I change the blend range so it only applies gradually, we get a very nice brightened image. But this also flattens the image. To get more contrast back, I'm going to add a curves layer on top of it with an S-curve. So we increase the shadows and the highlights. This looks much better, but we lost quite a bit of color. If I apply the hard light blend mode to the curve, we get quite a bit of the colors back. It is actually not so bad, but the hard light also made the bright areas very strong. So I'm going to duplicate the inverted layer, which by the way also creates a very nice retro look. but I'm going to move it to the top. This layer has the blend mode screen, which brightens the image, but I want to darken the image. So I will use a subtract method by setting its blend mode to subtract. Wow, did you see that? That is amazing. Exactly what I was looking for. Let's have a look at the before and the after. Just awesome. Look how the bright areas come to life, like the model's hair, but also the vertical light tubes. And all we applied was just an invert and a curves adjustment layer. Here is a bonus tip. If you want to increase the brightness a bit more, open the blend options of the top inverted layer and lower the effect from the brighter areas. Pretty cool. Remember what I said earlier when we applied the inverted layer in screen blend mode? I mentioned it flattened the image. So let's have a look how we can use that. Here's a nice romantic image. Let's increase the girly effect. I will again create an inverted layer by duplicating and applying an invert adjustment. To flatten the image, I'm going to set its blend mode to screen and adjust the blend range as usual. That looks pretty flat now, and here comes the interesting part. I can color it now by adding a recolor adjustment, and I will keep the default red color for now. If I change the blend mode of it to lighten, followed by an adjustment in the blend options, so the coloring only applies to the darker areas, we get this super romantic image. I just love how this turned out. Let's have a look at the before and the after. Quite a difference. Let's apply the same steps but with a twist to the next image. Again, I'm going to flatten it by using the invert screen adjustment. But this time, instead of adding a recolor adjustment, I'm going to add a vibrance adjustment. In the vibrance adjustment, I'm going to increase the saturation as much as I can. Excellent. And to finish up, let's change the blend mode of this vibrance adjustment to multiply. So we get this nice, beautiful, color-rich contrast back in the image. Super cool, especially if we go back at the before. We see how much interesting the after has become. Let's have a look at our final example, in which we will take the invert adjustment to the next level. Let me start by creating the inverted layer. But before I change the blend range of the image, I'm going to change the blend range of the invert adjustment itself. So it only applies to the brighter areas, resulting in that the shadows are not much affected with the invert adjustment. Now I will go to the semi-inverted image and change its blend range so the bright areas will not be blended in. We now get a brightened image. We can brighten it a little bit more by setting the blend mode to screen. To get the contrast back, I will add a curves adjustment and change the curve to an S-curve. Excellent, that looks pretty good compared to what we started with. To make it really interesting, we can set the blend mode of the curves layer to overlay or soft light. Let's have a look at the before and the after. Pretty amazing, I have to say. We brightened the image, but we kept the shadows and the colors. As you see, with the help of the invert adjustment, we can create quite amazing looks. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time.